I hit record.
Okay.
Awesome. So thank you everybody for joining us on behalf of the Miramar Pembroke Pines Regional Chamber of Commerce, along with the Western Florida Chamber of Commerce and the Pembroke Park West Park Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us for our conversation this morning. We are in our Government and Legislative Affairs Committee meeting, and we have our state representative, Robin Bartleman, with us. And so we've asked her to come here today to kind of give us a legislative update, tell us how session went, and those bills that we should be keeping an eye on that are going to affect not only our businesses, but obviously our economy and our community at large. So, Representative Bartleman, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. I'm really, really happy to be here. As previously noted, we had almost 2,000 bills. About 230, I believe, were passed. Two of those were mine. I'm just going to give a plug for my bills. I'm waiting for them to get signed. One involves human trafficking training for nurses. Human people who are human trafficked are in the shadows, and usually you find them and can identify them when they go to an ER or an urgent care center. So it's going to require training of newly licensed nurses. So they, when they day one, the 30,000 nurses who enter our workforce every year know how to identify those victims. And the second bill has to do with a parental bill of rights. In terms of child abuse, it's going to strengthen our child abuse laws. There are situations where infants uh, start getting bruises and other unexplainable injuries, and parents don't know what to do. They take them to the ER. They get to the ER and they find they're accused of abuse and their children are taken away from them. To give you, we had many parents come and testify. To give you the saddest case, brought her child in for something wrong with their leg, and baby infant, an infant is a baby, but like a tiny, like only a couple weeks old. And they took the baby away immediately, said she was abusing the infant. It took 18 months and $300,000 in legal fees to find out that the baby had brittle bone disease. And if the parent did not have the $300,000 to litigate, they would have never gotten that second opinion. And later on to find out that the file actually had in it that they should test for brittle bone disease, and no one ever did. So this is just a simple bill. There are five genetic uh, diseases or disorders that impact this. It's brittle bone disease, of course. It's vitamin D deficiency, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, rickets. So that you have these genetic disorders that have symptoms that mimic signs of abuse. This allows the parent that they have the right to get a second opinion and get that test so they can exonerate themselves. And we had parent after parent come and testify, and they're still dealing with the trauma because the infant is taken away at such a young age and then bonds with the foster caregiver. And then at 18 months, now you're going to a family. It is traumatic for everybody. So those were my two bills this session. But the main
Wow.
thing we're going to talk about today is property taxes because that is on everybody's mind. Now, I need to first say that I never get a call in my office asking me to reduce property taxes. My calls have to do with property insurance. I'm dealing with someone right now who their property insurance has gone up $1,000 each year, even though it's supposed to be going down. But property taxes is something the governor wants to tackle. And so he wants the state legislature to do an HJR, which is what we're going to do is what we usually do is we usually have a constitutional committee that meets every so often to put things on the ballot, and they'll put something on the ballot for you to vote on, and they'll give you implementing language. What does that mean? It goes out to the public and then they decide if they're going to support it. So what they wanted us to do was to decide whether or not we want to eliminate property taxes. The governor is calling for an all-out ban, only holding schools harmless. I need to also let people know this. The way they're tying this to everything is they're saying, well, you never really own your home. Well, you do really own your home. Your property taxes are paying for services in your community that you utilize, like your police, like your fire, like your hospital system, like Children's Services Council, like South Florida Water Management District. All these services, that's what you're paying for. It's almost like a fee. It's not that you don't own your house. It's that when you call 911, you want the police or the fire truck to come. So my speaker, Danny Perez, who I I think did a great job this year establishing the House of Representatives as an equal branch of government, said, fine, if we're going to do this, we're going to study it. He had 8 bills that he proposed, and they went through a committee, and there were a lot of discussions. And it was really great that he did it because we were able to flesh out a lot of issues with the bills. Like, first of all, the first thing they said is they wanted to hold police harmless, meaning funding could not be cut for police. Come to find out, that did not include fire safety, paramedics, or any of that. So it was through this process in committees that they're like, okay, we're going to include all public safety, but it does not include 911 operators, or a lot of our counties fund the jails. So that would have to be fleshed out. So we had 8 bills. I'm going to talk about the bill that passed the floor. And but the 8 bills ranged from, you only get your property tax bill can only go up once every 3 years. If you're 65 and over, you have a total homestead property tax exemption. Um, and I think there there was one that involved a phase in. So, but none of those went to the floor. The only bill that went to the floor is one that was a total elimination of homesteaded property taxes except for schools. What does that really mean? And so I'm going to go over that. First of all, it creates a 40, almost of about a 40 something, $46 billion hole in the state budget. Now there are like 411 cities. Um, so all of us have different property values. The average property value in Broward County, I think, is 400 something, where we have some little cities in the Panhandle where the average property um, owner value is $100,000 to $200,000. There was one really little city that I saw, and it was like the average property value was like 60,000, but I think it was the one city that's near the prison in the Panhandle, and they have a lot of manufactured homes, and that's where the guards live. So we don't have a one size fits all for the state of Florida, because we have South Florida, which is very urban, has a lot of commercial, and then we have a lot of rural and smaller counties. So what this would have done is, it would, anyone who has a homesteaded property, you would not pay property taxes for your cities or your counties. So what does that mean? Your cities and counties fund your police, your libraries, your roads, the jail, the Broward County Jail. They fund they fund Children's Services Council, which is the umbrella group that takes care of all of our families and needs. It funds your hospital districts. We have North Broward and South Broward Hospital District. And most importantly, the one item that I brought up that no one fleshed out is that it funds the South Florida Water Management District. What you need to know about the South Florida Water Management District is that they are responsible for all of, from Lake Okeechobee down, for the Everglades, the aquifer, the clean drinking water, the C9, the C11 canal, and they deal with all of the inland and coastal flooding. And under this proposal in Broward County alone, they would lose 35% of their budget. Now, the reason they're saying we need to do this is because there's waste, and I would not argue. I am sure there is waste everywhere. I agree. We are not, perfect. But something like the South Florida Water Management District, which literally protects our homes from flooding. We had Tropical Storm Eta, remember that, where everything was underwater, and Alana takes care of us with the Broward Drainage District. Um, they play such an instrumental role. Without them, we would literally be underwater. And so they're appointed by the governor. They have no ability to raise any other money. And the governor, and like I said, would you argue that the governor's appointees are not wasting money? And they're like, yeah. And I go, well, then what are they going to do? So I'm going to go over the numbers and how this impacts you. The bill that was presented simply said, you're going to vote to eliminate your homestead property taxes. Now, usually when we put something on a constitutional amendment on the ballot, you have something called an implementing bill. And the implementing bill explains exactly what's going to happen when you pass this. For the first time ever, and you will hear questioning in committee, we asked, well, what does this mean? What's going to happen? Like, what happens to 911 operators? What happens to this? What happens to that? And they said, we will figure that out in the implementing bill that will be passed a year later. So they're asking you to vote for something without having all of the details. And so that is my biggest problem, is that without an implementing bill, you don't know what that means. When the state is losing tens of billions of dollars, you can't just make that up. So in questioning, when we spoke to all the bill sponsors, we've got a couple of answers. Are we going to shift the burden to a sales tax? If it's a sales tax, the estimation is anywhere between 14 and 15%. You would have to raise sales tax. Are we going to do fees? Because you still have to pick up your garbage, you still have to pay for your police, you still have to pay for your fire, and I'm going to go into the police and fire in a moment. Which would then you're still paying, you're just paying out of your back pocket instead of your front pocket. And in the end, that would actually hurt people who have long-term homesteaded properties because they could end up paying more because we've been frozen. And that was another discussion. The issue is that I'm paying so little in property taxes because I've been in my house 30 years, and my neighbor is paying so much for the same house across the street because they moved in. So we asked about a solution to deal with that, and that fell on deaf ears. So what does this mean? When they tell you it was through discussion and debate on the floor and an amendment that I proposed that flushed all this out, they say it's not going to touch police and fire. In most of our counties and most of our cities, police and fire are over 50% of the budget.
Yeah.
So this proposal, Parkland loses 90% of their budget. So they have 10% now to fund whatever's left. That includes everything. So it creates a floor and a ceiling for public safety, because just like our expenses have gone up, their expenses have gone up. They need to raise salaries to recruit officers. They have to pay more into FRS. You have cities like Hollywood that have a huge pension tied to that funding. And so we worked with outside agency, and there's an article in Florida Politics. You can read it. I worked with the League of Cities. And so when we debated this on the floor, I brought forward an amendment to backfill public safety. The state would be responsible for backfilling public safety. They did not take it, but it was in that discussion that this bill sponsor said, well, we'll have to cut the number of officers or change the police departments, and no one wants to defund the police. And it was also in that discussion that the report was released that 116 cities out of the 411 will no longer be able to afford their public safety. For us, that includes Pembroke Pines, that includes Davie, and that includes Weston in my district. They will not be able to maintain level funding because they're losing such a large part of their budget. So the idea that funding will be safe, it will not be safe. 116 cities will not be able to maintain their current police public safety budgets, and they will never get a raise. And they will to buy new equipment or anything like that, it will become impossible for capital because you they're already over 50% of your budget, and you cut their budget so much. So let me go into the fiscal impact for our county. The Broward County would lose $624 million. That will be 34.6% of their budget. Pembroke Pines loses about 45% of their budget. They're one of the communities that will not be able to maintain level funding for public safety. This is also important to families because remember, the cities are picking up part of the SROs in the public schools. And that's probably going to be the first place they're going to have to cut. Miramar loses $48 million, which is 42% of their budget. Then we have the South Broward Hospital District, which is 35% of their budget. Children's Services Council, which is 35% of their budget, and the South Florida Water Management District loses 35% of their budget, which is the proportionate share from Broward County, our share from Broward County. Weston actually loses 53% of their budget. So mind you, when over 50% of your budget is spent on public safety, which all of our cities do, and they're losing up to 50% of their budget, it's going to create a real pickle. The other idea is if we have to make this up, uh, which I told you about, whether we're going to raise sales tax or fees, those things are regressive. So they're going to hurt our people in the worst economic situation the most. It is also going to hurt our commercial businesses who rent and lease property and any renter because that's the one a non-homesteaded property is not impacted. So it's going to impact businesses across Florida as well as rents across South Florida because you can't, people are going to want their garbage picked up. People want their roads fixed. People want officers. People want ambulances at their beck and call. They want fire and emergency services. They want their libraries, they want their parks. So something's got to give. You can't cut up to 50% of a budget and not lose services or find a way to replace that. So that was the biggest issue we had in debate is, and by the way, none of this was discussed in the Senate. This was all
Right.
done at the House. And I know I've spoke to my friends, Republicans and Democrats across the aisle, and they're very concerned because a lot of them represent rural communities and the tinier communities that will then become welfare counties. We already have rural communities that the state helps with their funding. So now these counties will be decimated and these cities will be decimated, and someone's going to have to pick up the bill. So we left it during session. We passed this bill out of the House. It was on party lines that the vote went down. And then what happens is that bill goes into messaging for the Senate, and the Senate never took the bill. As a matter of fact, after Speaker Perez did this, which this wasn't the original bill that was on the agenda for the House floor, the original one was a phase-in model, which still gets you to this end product, but it gives you a couple of years to figure it out. Um, he just said, I'm going to give the governor what he wants. He put it on the agenda. You'll see there was an amendment to switch it to the other bill that morning at 7 a.m. They voted on it, sent it to the Senate. The Senate said, we're not taking this. And everybody started backpedaling, like, well, we're going to have to look at this. We can't be a one size fits all because this is going to impact communities differently. So I'm hoping that common sense will prevail and that they will go back. And I mean, I thought our speaker did a really good job with the 8 different bills to see how it impacts Florida's economy and what it does. But now at least we have all this research and what this really means. Like no one knew that 116 cities could maintain, level funding for public safety. So I think all of this was necessary to have the discussions. And so we're going to be called back for a special session for property taxes. I hear rumors that it could be like an additional, like, I think the thing that everyone could live with is like, okay, we're going to give everyone an additional $50,000 homestead exemption. That would make a difference for people, but wouldn't bankrupt the cities. They'd have to tighten their belts. If you go to Florida League of Cities, you'll see all the data and all of this information on their website. You can also look up your local municipalities and see what that means for you. We worked with the property appraiser, Marty Kier, and we actually had the exact numbers for every one of our cities with each proposal. So what will happen with special session is it'll go real fast. A bill will drop and everyone's going to have to be on high alert in our counties and our cities and our property appraiser to see what this really means. So once we do get a bill, it's voted on the House and the Senate. It has to be by 2/3, and then it goes on your ballot, and then 60% of the people have to vote for it. That my issue is that say this what we just have ended up on the ballot, you have no implementing language. People are going to be pissed if they wake up and find out they're going to be charged fees for everything, and that will be regressive. People are going to be pissed if they wake up, especially your business chamber, and find out there's a 14 or 15% sales tax increase. So the main thing that I am trying to get out there is that whatever we pass, you have to paint the picture and educate people what they're voting on. You can't just say we're getting rid of your property taxes without explaining what that means for them and what that means for their services and what that means in terms of robbing Peter to pay Paul. So that's the most important thing we can do. And I think we have to ensure transparency because people can't afford gas right now. They can't afford their rent. They can't afford anything. And if somebody's waving a carrot, like we're going to get rid of your property taxes and you vote on it and it passes, you're in a year from now, when you get your implementing bill and you find out what it really means, it's going to be very hard to get another 60% to overturn it because people are never going to vote to tax themselves again. And so it's a recipe for disaster. So that's what's happening with property taxes. So we are at a standoff or standstill right now with the governor and the Senate, and we will see what happens. I know that our local businesses were also very excited because HB 103 eliminated the local business tax. That did not pass in the Senate. That was not a well thought out proposal because if you're talking about eliminating property taxes and then local business taxes, that further decimates the cities. And what does that mean? There was also a question of what that meant for the state because your local business taxes help the cities provide services to DBPR in terms of regulation. And so would the state have to take that over? So that one did not pass. For my business owners, we are eliminating pennies nationally. So we now have how we're going to be implementing that in the state of Florida. If you are dealing with cash transactions, as soon as this bill is signed, if it's 1 or 2 cents that they have to pay or you have to reimburse, it rounds down to zero. 3 or 4, you round to a nickel. 6 or 7, you round to a nickel. 8, 9, you round to a dime. So when that passes, I'm sure DBPR is going to be sending that out because that's going to impact your tax transactions. In terms of the tax package, we had a whole bunch of different things in it. I'm on Ways and Means. We debated it, but the one thing we did do with it is we decoupled from the federal tax package because it was going to create a financial crisis in the state. So we did a whole bunch of decoupling. The hurricane items, you're not going to see a hurricane week because we did a permanent exemption on your batteries and all those emergency items. And the school sales tax holiday was in that package and it got removed, but it was originally slated for the end of July. So we're going to have to see how that'll come back with the budget. Um, I'm trying to think, I'm trying to stay business friendly and I can get to some other ones. There were some changes to the Live Local Act, which preempts governments to opt out of the act and make decisions as to what's the best use of the land. We had a bill for coastal resiliency that expands nature-based solutions and mangrove planting. When I talked about the South Florida Water Management District, the one that's going to lose 35% of their funding just from our county alone, they are in charge of all Everglades restoration, all the reservoir projects that are out there for inland and coastal flooding. They are in charge of the aquifer and all of our water quality. This coastal resiliency are projects and things that they would be doing as well. But mind you, if we pass the property taxes as is, we're losing 35% of that. The other thing that's really important to note is that we had a budget conference a year ago, and it showed that in 2 years, Florida was going to have some issues with their budget because we would go from a multi-billion-dollar surplus to a multi-billion-dollar deficit. And that's why these conversations are very important to have around property taxes. I told you already that we are funding rural counties, that we do provide some help for them. If we now decimate a lot of these counties and the state has to come in, where is that money coming from when we are facing a budget downturn in the state of Florida? So that's going to happen. I know a big issue in Pines and Miramar, my district, are the e-bikes and all the issues. So we did set up a task force for e-bikes and traffic safety, and we actually put some parameters around that. We have our own interpretation of the SAVE Act in terms of voting, that you have to have your real ID or your passport. Um, the issues that I am fighting with this, especially in Century Village, is that I have a group of seniors that do not have their birth certificates anymore. So they are not even able to get their real ID. And so we're helping like Bernie, who's 95 years old. He's not going to be able to vote. He's not even going to be able to get on a plane. Also, it impacts, I was unaware of this, but for minority communities, before Jim Crow, they didn't, a lot of them, when they were born, they were not issued birth certificates. Their names were written in a Bible. I didn't even know any of this until people came up to testify that it's impossible for them to get a birth certificate because of those things. But I think it's an older generation issue. Everyone now is able to get, like my generation, your generation, they'll be able to get it. But there will be a group of people that will be impacted by this who cannot get their birth certificates. Um, we will see changes to DEI, which affects the business chamber because, we have MWBE and all those programs that help women owned, minority owned businesses that are run through our cities and our counties. So they're just like there's no DEI in public schools. They got rid of women's studies classes, social studies being eliminated, sociology is being eliminated at the public university system now. Any MWBE, diversity, equity, inclusion programming has to be eliminated at the city level. This also impacts all the festivals. It will impact your business owners if they take advantage of MWBE. It will impact your festivals. Like we have a lot of festivals out there. No money can be used for. I think the main what they wanted to do is stop Pride, but it doesn't just stop Pride. It stops like Caribbean Jerk Fest in Miramar and all of those festivals because it can only be federal or state holidays that are celebrated and tax dollars are spent on. So you're going to see some changes at the city level regarding that. We did a lot for autism, which is great. I know a lot of people in West Broward. I work very closely with the autism community. So we will have blue envelopes that people will give law enforcement when they're pulled over to identify them. I'm going to open it up for questions because I gave you a lot. But so we did a lot. We're waiting to see now what the governor is going to sign. He just signed the Trump Airport in Palm Beach County, which also includes the Charlie Kirk Way, and a portion of Commercial Boulevard will be named the Trump Highway. I'm trying to think, we did a lot for veterans in terms of dental care. We know that veterans do not get dental care unless the issue with their mouth is related to a war injury or an on-duty injury when they were serving. So we expanded that. We expanded court for our veterans so they can get a lot of them get involved in law enforcement because of their PTSD. And so now we're going to allow all of them to participate in that court process. We have increased penalties for pornographic images. This is really important. I did get Representative Jacques to put a Romeo and Juliet law in there. But basically, if you have 10 images of a child, it's child abuse, child pornography, you now have a minimum mandatory sentence. So all of us with teenagers know that we know teenagers that are freshmen in college over 18, dating their senior who's 17. And I don't know what is wrong with this generation, but they have no problem sending nudes of themselves all around. And and so I spoke to him about it because I live in my community and I talk to parents who find stuff on their kids' phones. So if it's a situation like it will not be a minimum mandatory for a Romeo and Juliet situation. But if your kid gets a naked picture of someone who's underage and they go out and share it with everybody, they will have a minimum mandatory, right? So you have to have those really tough conversations with your kids because I don't know what is wrong with this generation. Like, I didn't want to be seen in a bathing suit or a bikini when I was a teenager. And they have like no problem sending naked pictures to each other. So have those tough conversations because minimum mandatories, they have no choice but to put you in jail for 5 years. So you have to pay attention to that. So I'm going to open it up for questions on different bills. I think I spoke enough at you and I'd rather have a conversation. Also for my businesses, as you all know, please contact my office if you have issues with any state agency. We have a lot of in-home nursing businesses that are in our chamber. We have a lot of people who have issues with DBPR. Contact my office and let us help you and facilitate that communication. That's what we do well. We're also working on getting everybody their real ID if they haven't been able to get a driver's license appointment. Also, in terms of your insurance, as many of you know, I had citizens come down to meet with all my homeowners in my office who had issues. We continue to make sure we provide links to and open communication with the Office of Insurance Regulation for you, because some people are just having serious issues affording their insurance. So make sure you give us a call. In the chat, I put my phone number. That's my personal cell. You can call me anytime. And now I'll open it up to questions if I covered enough. I think I did.
No, of course you always do. Thank you so much, Robin. Yeah, committee members, feel free to join me in here. Unmute yourself, ask your questions. Alana, I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective on how this is affecting you. In case all of you don't know, Commissioner Alana Mercinger with the South Broward Danish District. Yeah, let's hear it. How is this going to
Okay,
affect
well,
us?
I did speak to some people from South Florida Water Management, and they are not happy. Let's put it that way. I'll be nice because we're being recorded. I'll be nice. I just don't want to. No, because people don't realize that one of the reasons people live in certain communities is for the services that you get. Let's say the parks and the soccer and that's why families move to certain areas. But I just don't know why the state wants to take away all local control, because that's what it's appearing to me. And we have to have a balanced budget. So whose back is this going to be on? It's just got to be on somebody's back, or everybody will just, I guess, fill our own potholes. I don't know. If you have no money, you can't do squat. Um, and in the special session, I don't want to take up everybody's time because I could, mm, um, because I'm glad that the bill died for the moment, but we know it's coming back in special session in one form or another. Um, and the business tax bill died, which if Dave was here would be thrilled. But I know. Well, he would want to. No, he wouldn't be thrilled. Anyway, so what can we do? You know,
I
I
think
don't think it affects me in South Broward because I'm a non ad valorem tax that has nothing to do with homestead. But
I think the issue is getting educated. I think because you don't have an implementing bill and because we don't even know we are going to have a special session, I think the key is going to be whatever we do come up with is education. You'll see Pembroke Pines has already put out a video explaining property taxes and what they pay for. And so that video is available on their website. I think every municipality is going to do that. And I know we have someone from the Realtors Association. Where do people like to move? They like to leave to Parkland. They like to move to Weston. Parkland loses 90% of its budget under this proposal. That is like crazy. So we all have to educate ourselves on what the final product is and what the real implications are. Because like in what we should be doing is giving you a proposal with implementation language. Now, I am not going to lose hope because I feel like we have hammered that a lot in all of our debate that you can't ask people to vote on something without giving them all the details.
doesn't,
So
I'm sorry to
it's
interrupt you, but before something goes on the ballot, don't judges have to look at it for the language, the 75 words or whatever, and to
right,
see
but
clear?
this is this is the state putting it on. So
They
it's
don't
not
get
a
it
it's
doesn't
yeah,
go to the judges?
no, it's not going to be like a ballot initiative from the public. It's different. So that's why you have to have, and I'm sure someone can sue or bring anything forward, but you have to, the devil's going to be in the details of how this impacts your local community. Like literally, I spent my whole session meeting with small counties and small municipalities that I didn't even I'm like, you're a city? I had no idea. Like these cities I never heard of. I had their mayors and their commissioners coming in, showing me how they have no waste, giving me their budgets and saying, if this passes, we will no longer exist. And so I was on Ways and Means. So I was always going to hear every bill on the final stop. And they are at a loss. Also, you know, a lot of people who on the other side also have concerns about how this is going to impact their cities. I think everybody is like, what does this mean? Also, I didn't say this, when we come back for special session for property taxes, we also did not complete the budget. So we are about $1 billion apart, which seems like a lot, but that's not a lot in state legislature language. So we're going to be doing the budget. The rumor is we're going to be doing the budget the week before the special session for the congressional redistricting. And then Governor DeSantis said we're going to have 6 special sessions yesterday. And I know that the Senate president said we really have to, what gave me, I don't blame my speaker, because I think my speaker was like, if this is what you want, here, we're giving it to you. And if he hadn't gone through the special committee and all of the bills, like, we wouldn't be able to flush all of this out. But the Senate president was like, this has to be very thoughtful. So we're gonna have to just wait and see like what they give us. And my biggest fear is, well, you're in Tallahassee. I know Claudia can say this. The way the rules have changed a lot, but basically they can drop a bill or an amendment a half hour before you go into session, and then you have to vote on it without any of that information. Like that, luckily, like, he changed the property tax proposal right before we went to session. He met the deadline, the bill sponsor met the deadline to change it to a complete like elimination. But luckily, because we had already seen a bill like that in our committee, we were ready to debate that. So that's what it's going to take. And it's going to take the business. I mean, if I was a business, I would be very concerned, because the only place to generate more revenue will be through commercial and through non-homestead. So that I know people who own a lot of Airbnbs, and I'm telling them the same thing. Just be ready, because you can't lose 50 to 90% of your budget and not have to find a way,
Take
especially
it up.
when the law says you have to maintain your public safety budget. So,
Don't you also have a balanced budget?
yeah, well, it's going to be balanced on the backs of all of you
Yeah, and
and all your services. So not only does it have to be balanced, it has to meet the provision for public safety, which the report already shows 116 cities can't meet. So that's going to be a huge problem. Like, we have a huge problem hiring police in Pines and other cities, because it's so, like, they're just not enough of them to go around. So the ability for someone to raise money, to raise a salary, a beginning salary, all that's going to be taken away when you create the floor and the ceiling with the level funding. So these are all conversations, and when you speak to the police and the fire, they know this. They know this is a huge problem. Speak to the cities like Hollywood, where they have to fund all the pensions. Like, this impacts everything. So, I was very stressed all session, because I debated against every one of these proposals. Not so much on the every 3 years. I felt like that was something we could it was doable. And the 65 and over, I felt bad. It would decimate the villages pretty much in those areas. But, it was very stressful, but I'm glad we did that, because now we have education. Like, you see Pembroke Pines, they have their video explaining. When the cities do their budgets, they're going to explain this to everybody. It's just that if people are hurting really bad and they know they can save money and this is on their ballot, they're not going to know till a year later that they're going to be paying more money in fees, right? So that's the problem. So the perfect world is you have a bill that works for everybody. It's not a one size fits all. And you have implementing language so that people really know what they're voting on.
Yeah, and the chamber
Oh,
is going to
cool.
stay on top of this very closely and make sure that we are educating our members on it. I imagine, just based on preliminary conversations, that our board will want to take a position on this, understandably, and one way or another, make sure that we are sharing with our community, from an economic development perspective, how this is going to impact our businesses. But Pierre, did I see you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, couldn't the speaker, before he put it forward, request that the implementation, language, be there? Because to me, how could you say, okay, you have to put it up, but without knowing how it's going to work?
Can somebody repeat that? I can hear that on my phone.
The
Yeah, so
implementation language, couldn't the speaker require that the implementation language, be there? Because how
Oh,
could you
can
ask
he?
people to vote on, you supporting something, and then you don't have, you could not say to people, okay, okay, I'm supporting that because this is how it is going to work.
Well, that was the issue we had with all 8 bills, and I questioned every bill sponsor who presented a bill that there was no implementing language, and we were told it'll be in a year. They were not backing off. But I do not think now that the Senate, remember, the Senate has to pass this 2/3, and the Senate blocked a lot of stuff this year.
My God.
So there, I think that, common sense will prevail, and my hope is that they will do this. But this was also a power struggle between, the chambers and the governor. And my speaker, which the House loves him because he said we're an equal branch of government. We've always been a rubber stamp, and we are not. And so he actually, he's like, okay, this is what you want, Governor. This is what we're giving you. So I think that it was a lot of stress for me and a lot of work, but it was worth it because I'm hoping that, you know, calmer minds will prevail and we'll do something. And just based on what the Senate president said publicly, I mean, they can't just eliminate it and not have a plan. So I'm hoping that we will get to the point where it's done right. But special sessions scare the hell out of me because they're usually done like in a week. When we have legislation, like the bill that I passed for child abuse, we had 3 committee stops. And in every committee stop, I had an amendment. Every committee stop, I made the language better. Even on the morning on the House on the floor, we fixed one more piece of language for Department and Children and Families. So the point of having legislative session is your bill gets better, right? We had a pharmacy bill that was going to index our drug prices against some countries, and it was going to have huge implications and take care of pharmacy managers, which I don't have a problem with that. And we worked through that in committee, and I worked with the bill sponsor, and by the end, that price indexing was taken out. And when we got to the floor, that bill was passed unanimously. But that was because we went through the process and we were able to weed everything out because your bills don't come out perfect. We had another bill that sexual predators, the original bill, and I had to vote no on it. I got accused, oh, you like sexual predators. But the original bill, the way it was written, was that a sexual predator can't live next to any body of water where someone could potentially swim or a swimming pool. So literally, if you're on the sexual registry list, you couldn't live in an island in the Everglades. So I wrote an amendment, and by the end of the 3 committees, that bill, I voted no the first committee because I'm like, they have to live somewhere. The probation officers have to be able to find them. Um, by the end, I supported the bill. And that's the point of the session. And that's the point of having 2 parties and having diverse, opinions, because in the end, you get to a better product. But when you have special session, literally it's done in a couple days. And sometimes you get not good stuff. So
Yeah,
that is
especially
what
if there's going to be 6 of them. So I can't imagine
right.
what
And these
that's
are
going to
going to
look
be,
like.
and I'm sure it's going to be really important things that impact you.
Yeah.
Right.
Claudia has
So,
no.
oh, go ahead.
Claudia, you have a question?
No, I actually just first I want to congratulate you, Representative, because wow, what a bunch of wonderful, real, impactful um, things you got behind. So
Thank you.
much, and I appreciate the time to explain to us um, all the things that you did. But for, the autism, the veterans, the nurses with human trafficking, I mean, amazing, fantastic. And that is very, very hard work. You and your team hustled beyond belief. So, and those are huge implications. And my one question is,
Uh-huh.
how did we get from a surplus, that kind of a surplus, to that kind of a deficit? And what can we do to make turn this into an opportunity? I think you've done so much homework on this that I'm optimistic that even it's only going to be a week, that you guys will come up with something good. Okay. So I do believe in trusting our elected officials. I do believe in advocacy, but I also listen to You have basically dug through so much of the property tax issue, but I want to know really, because I haven't asked, and listening to you, how did we get from this mega surplus to this mega deficit, and can we use it as an opportunity to have every single solitary city strengthen their budgetary process and get rid of the waste so that yeah.
Okay, so the deficit that's going to occur is going to be at the state level. A lot of that has to do with non-reoccurring COVID dollars, and also the vouchers are breaking us because when they expanded the vouchers to 70, to above the threshold, 70% of people that took the vouchers had never been in public school. So our education budget, and I don't want to get into like whether you're for vouchers or not vouchers. It's just a fact. It's breaking us. It's the same thing as happening in Arizona right now. So if you do any Googling on Arizona, just know that Florida will be Arizona because we have the same voucher bill that they had with no guardrails. The other thing is just economic conditions. Now, our cities are flush right now because we have really high property values, but all of us were here in 2008. I was a school board member in 2008 when the property values tanked. I had to cut over $1 billion from the school budget, and I had to lay off 700 people. And it was like crazy because it's not like in the legislature, I vote and argue and like maybe just Alana is there, but nobody else is there for my community. But I had like all 700 people with their kids standing room only watching me lay them off. It was terrible. It was terrible. So hopefully things will get better. We're losing a lot of money. The big beautiful bill in terms of healthcare that the federal government passed. There are huge implications for Florida. Just this year alone, we're losing $3.8 billion in healthcare, and it's going every year. You're going to see more cuts. So services are getting cut. What's going to happen is people are going to go to hospitals for care, and it's going to be uncompensated care. It's just, there's a lot going on. So I'm not, and with the war and the gas prices, like I feel like we're in a recipe for disaster, and probably we should not do anything right now. Um, um, just kind of wait and see what's going to happen because you're a realtor. You know what happens when those property values tank. Like everyone on my street, like except for the originals, are all going to be upside down at some point on their homes and their mortgages. So,
It's
I
a
think
very interesting dynamic
it is.
because every single economist, every single expert on data, analytics, and insights in the real estate realm states that there's no way this trend of the luxury, the international, the migration to Florida ends anytime between now and 15 years. And many say 20 years, that it will continue, our property taxes will continue to rise because of the wealth migration, not necessarily us who live here, but the wealth migration. And because these businesses that are relocating to South Florida, the average salary of the employees that they bring with them is 30% higher than ours. So there's so many dynamics here. But again, I am very grateful for your public service. I believe that you have done, really right by, your constituents and how you have approached all of this. And yeah, I mean, once there's a statement or something that's, I don't know, an educational sheet or something that comes
Yeah.
out, and I know it's going to be very, very fast, very
I know.
fast.
And I like that you shared about how we are having all these businesses come in, but what we're missing, what the people that are getting hurt in all of this is the working class.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. And people are going to move here, but if you don't have waiters, if you don't have teachers, we're having a hard time getting public safety, like policemen and firemen. If you don't have that, we're not going to be like desirable. And
We're
that
not
is,
going to be desirable.
I
Yep.
mean, we even had a bill, again, I always say the Senate is more common sense. We even had a bill this year. We all voted to raise the minimum wage, right? That was a constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
And we had a bill that was going to allow businesses to opt out of that, not pay somebody minimum wage, and then just sign a waiver. It didn't, again, the Senate was like, no, we're not taking that. The Senate is, I don't know what the difference is between the Senate and the House. Like, we also sent over letting 18-year-olds buy AR-15s again. Overturning the MSD Act. And the Senate's like, no, we're not taking that. So it's good that we have two branches. And it's good that, like, to me, I don't think any one party should ever have absolute power. I think not even my party or any power or any party, because you really have to have a balance to get to the best common sense approach. And so right now, the Senate seems to be the one that's a little more common sense on things because they did block a lot. The one thing I want to point about the voucher program, which is going to be a problem for us economically in the state, is that the state auditor general did an audit on the voucher program and uncovered hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud, in
Oh.
bad accounting. This is not us. This is DeSantis's auditor saying you have to fix this. And the senator, I think it was Gates, he actually took all the things they said and put it in a bill, which was like every student gets an ID number so you can track who you're giving money to. You pay monthly because they're having issues with clawing back. They found kids who weren't living in a county going to private schools in, counties far away. And the House refused to take any of those. So here you have like an auditor general saying this is a screwed up system, right? You have issues with the homeschoolers. Like, you still have parents using their homeschool money to buy Disney annual passes. Um, and the Senate's like, let's clean it up. And the House didn't clean it up. So that bill kind of stalled, and we need to clean that up. We also had issues with the emergency fund. That was a big bone of contention because the emergencies fund is what has funded Alligator Alcatraz. And so the issue, without getting into, I don't want to get into what anyone feels about immigration because we were a mixed company. So I don't, the way and I've been to Alligator Alcatraz. My issue is what, no matter where you are in immigration, we should not be spending $92 million on porta potties. Whether you care about the cages, whether you care about the tents, you could take that whole facility and plop it on a field somewhere in Florida that has electrical hookup and plumbing. So literally we have not gotten reimbursed for that from the federal government yet. They're saying they may not reimburse us. And the problem is it is so remote. And if you go out there, you will see it. You will see tanker trucks filled with water, bringing water in and then taking waste out. It's just not a practical long-term solution. They should actually pack it all up and put it. We have fields all over the state. They can put it on next to, you got to see our prisons. Some of them have a lot of like land, and they could hook everything up there and have plumbing and have electricity and not have to do this camping in the Everglades thing. So the House reined it in and said it could only be for natural disasters. And then the Senate backed off. So now we're in the same place. But all those tents, all those AC units, those are all supposed to be for an emergency in Florida. And we're literally, I think we're going to be up to $500 million or more in spending for this facility, which you could have done more economically. So I try not to get into the where everyone is on the issue. Instead, just say this is a business chamber, and is that a smart idea to spend money this way when you could do it more economically and get the same result? You could call it Alligator Alcatraz next to a canal somewhere in Broward County and do the same thing and have plumbing and electricity. So, and I'm trying to be very neutral on this because people have very divided opinions about immigration. I just want to talk about the economics of the situation and how it doesn't make sense. So,
And we appreciate that. And we have to also hope that we don't have a very, difficult storm season.
Yeah.
this year,
Not
because
gonna be
that
money.
will, I mean, where are we gonna be able to help our communities if that's the case? Nisha, I wanted to see if you had a question. I know
Yes.
you raised your hand.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And what a segue because storm season, right? That's my language.
Uh-huh.
So good morning,
Good
Robin. I
morning.
am Nisha Corby. I'm the area leader at Florida Parent Light of
Uh-huh.
the major and governmental account managers. So my team in Broward County handles all of the major and governmental accounts. So we're
Uh-huh.
talking South and North Broward Hospital District. We're talking all the municipalities, right? So
Right.
we offer them the white glove treatment, so to speak. So FPL, I'm just curious what impact, so strategically, seeing that this 35% cut, especially in the hospital districts, is at stake, I'm just wondering how best strategically we should, I mean, obviously they will continue to use electric and so forth, but how best can we, I guess, throttle and
Well, I
to
think at some
respect
point,
them,
yeah.
and what they're facing will be the advice. Because, you gave so much refreshing information. A lot of it is kind of new to me, just being in the engineering world. So I appreciate you. And it
Thank
was
you.
really refreshing. It was really, really refreshing to hear all that you said.
Oh, well, I would just say, educate you're a huge employer. So education is going to be a key. Yeah, I know that the commission just raised all our rates. That is not, you're not responsible for that. So I don't
Right.
want to put that picture on you. With
Right.
your beautiful smile, that is not you. But we need to do something about the rates and hopefully, like, this is going to create, people are, I'm very concerned. How do I know? Because I get an uptick on unemployment calls because people can never navigate that system. I get an uptick on insurance. A lot of my seniors. So I know it's getting bad. It's like, it's not as bad as COVID. COVID was, I was on the phone all day. It's okay because I had nowhere to go, but, but helping people do their unemployment and do all their stuff. But I do see that uptick for the average person. So I think just as a state, we're going to have to figure this out. And remember that the low socioeconomic people, the ones that we need to have those jobs, the service industry, a lot of them rent. And the place to tax with the property taxes is going to be that commercial property and that non-homesteaded. So that's gonna hurt them more. So it's a lot. I think hopefully we'll go into, I think our speaker, the reason you're having these budgets talks is because Perez from day one, he took over, he knows it's coming and he's like, we're gonna be smart and we're not gonna spend like sailors anymore. We have to govern ourselves. And that has been his theme. His theme has been member-led legislation. And his theme, he didn't have a House Bill 1 or a House Bill 5. He didn't have any big bill. His whole purpose was to reestablish us as an equal branch and to start cutting the budget. So when I go in next term, Sam Garrison is ready to, take care of the budget. So I think we're trying to do this responsibly. It's just going to be what we come up with. I mean, and we still need to work on insurance because what people aren't talking about is businesses and their liability insurance. Like right now, I just met with the Early Learning Coalition before I went to session. They cannot afford liability. The ones that are left because venture capitalists are purchasing all of our pre-Ks apparently. They can't afford liability insurance. They can't afford their property insurance. So we have to find a way. And there are suggestions that have been out there, but it's a huge industry, and some people are going down. But talk to the members in your chamber about their liability insurance. Ask if it's really going down for them, because I can tell you the people that talk to me, it's not in terms of those. So we need to be able to address those issues. So.
And may I? Okay.
Yes, please.
I usually just jump in, but I'm trying to be nice. There's like three things, four things, maybe five. One,
Okay.
did they take into consideration, because I know for every dollar we put into the arts, the community gets $47 back. $47 for every dollar. And if we have this DEI thing, so if you don't have a Carib Fest, that's a lot of money lost. You don't have this festival, St. Patrick's Day parade, or whatever, or just theater. It's $47 is a lot of money for every dollar. That's a good investment.
I
Uh,
know the Pride festivals, like in
yeah,
Wilton
it's
Manors
a
and
lot of
Fort
money.
Lauderdale and Orlando, we had the economic impact because of the
Yeah,
business and the tourists they bring in. Yeah, I don't.
I don't get
That's
it.
gonna be. It's just the way it is. I don't know what to say. We fight
And
DEI every year. It's just that is. There's always a new boogeyman. So I don't.
I don't understand.
I don't
I
know. I
yeah.
just tell people that I try to mitigate it the best I can. File amendments. Like I have a Celtic festival.
Now you don't.
Like now I don't.
Now you don't.
We all went through all. Just think about Miami and all the festivals they have. So, but in terms of doging though, uh, the state also needs to doge itself. Like we have the alligator Alcatraz that has not been doged. We have the issue with the $10 million that went to the grand jury.
Mhm.
We need to doge. We can't just selectively doge. We have to doge. If we're gonna doge everybody and see
Yeah,
what we're
the other
doing.
thing is, I don't think the
Because
people
there's waste in Democratic counties and Republican
fine,
counties and everywhere.
fine.
It's just that you don't fix it by eliminating 90% of a city's budget. Like that is
And
crazy.
I really don't believe the people on Star Island are going to start cleaning their own homes. You have to have the middle and the lower economic workers to make up. And if we're not going to pay them and they can't live here,
Yeah.
how? I just can't see Star Island cleaning their own houses. I just can't.
Let me ask
Putting
Claudia a
it out
question
there.
with their realtors. What are you guys seeing in terms of affordability? Because we modified the Live Local that's supposed to take out some barriers, but we still don't have housing for police and teachers. What are you seeing what are the realtors seeing? Because you have information
It's
that we're not privy to all the time.
no. It continues to be uh, a huge issue. We have actually, I brought it forth a bit ago. I happen to live in Doral. I happen to live right next to Southern Command. I happen to have worked for someone who, I said to him, this issue of all we have all the branches here. They can't afford to live here.
I know.
And so they come, they're stationed, they're assigned to Southern Command, and so many of them, because we had meetings in Southern Command, they have to rent something here with 5 or 6 other people and leave their families in their home states. And so so I asked, can we as a realtor association talk about this? And I got very positive. This was recent. This was in the last month that I said this. So affordability is a very big issue. I mean, it is
And
a big
now, and the property taxes will directly impact rents. And the other issue I want to bring up is for me, I don't know, Alana, those of us who live in our neighborhoods, my daughter is a teacher. She's staying at home saving her money.
of course.
Hello?
I look down my street and her age group, the kids that were on the bus with her that are in the same grade,
They're still in their
th-
parents' houses.
they're all moved back
They
home.
can't afford.
Like we have to find a way, but I don't think Live Local is doing enough. Like there's a couple of what I'm hearing is you get a couple of affordable units and then the other units are a lot of money.
Well,
And
you
that's
figure if
Claudia,
someone's
are you
making,
seeing that? Is that true
yeah,
when you
it's absolutely true. Because if you're making 60, even $70,000 a year, and your rent is $3,000 to $4,000 a month, or even two, it's. I'm one of the original owners, so I make out made in the shade. But the people who are just or kids, I don't know how a kid or a young family can afford to buy a house. I know my son just bought a house in Ohio. Don't even ask. And he paid for 3 bedroom, half acre, 2 bath, two and a quarter.
Oh, my nephew just moved to Ohio. I think that's where they're all going. Do you know what?
So
You know what? There was a proposal to move when you move to take 100% of your portability with you.
yeah,
Now that was a good proposal. That didn't even really get a lot of airtime, but that was also something because I can't move out of my house because I have
no.
a
Where
30
am I
year
going?
homestead. Where am I going?
Where am I going?
But then my schools in Weston are getting under enrolled
Yeah.
because there's no young family able to move in. Like you have Panther Run that's going to be closed. That place used to have tons of little kids, but you have a whole bunch of older people like you and me staying in our homes, and then our kids are moving back. It's just like,
But
but
when
then
this house should, because it's a 5-bedroom house, there should be a young family living in it, like I moved into it with my kids. And
yeah,
because the price of living is so expensive, where am I going?
yeah, exactly.
I know you
Yeah.
got to get going.
Yeah, I just want to
Yes.
let everybody know I have a hard stop. In the chat, I put my personal cell phone. So I look forward to working with Claudia because I work with the Broward Realtors. I'm glad you're part of our group now. You guys do provide a lot of good information. I just want to thank everybody, and I hope I didn't overstimulate you. I sometimes, because I'm a teacher, I like really explain everything.
Now you woke me
Um,
up, Robin. It's not good. I was
it's
planning to
not,
get back to
it's
sleep.
not, but I'll come back as special. Angie, I know you meet once a month, so I'll come back. I can always get on a Zoom from Tallahassee during special sessions.
Thank you
You
so
would
So
be most welcome
I will
anytime.
definitely do that, and I'll send out
much.
alerts when bills come. I'll send them to you, Angie, and you
Perfect.
can send them. And like honestly, no one has a monopoly on all of this. That's why we need everybody, like these groups, to come back to me and give me ideas. That's how I get everything I do is like an idea from somebody, like
They come.
there's always there. That's how you make a difference, because someone says this is a problem and you're like, really? And okay, let me see if I
Yeah.
can fix that. All right. Thank you
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you. Have a
Robin. We
good
All right.
Thank
day.
appreciate
And
you so
Bye. Happy
much.
Passover and
thank
happy
happy
you.
Easter to
Easter,
everybody.
Robin.
All
Thank you,
right. Thank you.
Robin.
Bye bye.
Hope you find a lot of eggs.